It started with a simple touch, but when I felt him react, everything spiraled out of control. You won't believe what happened next. Certain moments are believed to remain etched in our memories forever. They grasp like murmurs quiet, yet perpetually present. 2 years have slipped by since that fateful day. 2 years since everything transformed beyond recognition. What began as an ordinary day at the beach, with my husband's son Thomas, from a previous relationship soon transformed into an unexpected adventure. Lincoln. My husband was once more absent, his work perpetually taking precedence over our lives. This solitude had transformed into a well-known companion, yet that day felt distinctly unusual. In those instances, we discovered our haven soaking in the sun's embrace, which perhaps was a shade too fervent. I reclined, finally liberated from the din of existence, and requested Thomas to assist me with the oil on my back. I pressed on, unwavering in my conviction. Though he is my stepson, and not of my blood, I have nurtured him as if he were my own. What rationale underpins my choice to pursue this course of action? Initially, it appeared insignificant, just his hands leading me. However, I later understood its true significance. His presence seemed to sink deeper, gradually fading away, and I made the decision to remain uninvolved. What lies at the heart of this matter? Did I fail to halt him? You are certain that you hold insight, perhaps believing you understand your family well. Yet there exists a singular moment that has the power to reveal everything. It was on that beach that my life took a turn, an event that would etch itself into the fabric of my existence. Lincoln and I had woven the intricate tapestry of marriage for over 15 years. To those familiar with our lives, we would be depicted as the ideal couple, residing in a delightful home, raising commendable children, and leading a life characterized by unwavering stability. Yet the fissures remain concealed until one discovers themselves ensconced within the confines. I refrained from stepping in. During weekends and holidays, I found solace in the belief that his extended hours and unwavering commitment were driven by the hope of a more promising future for our family. However, as time unfolds, that narrative begins to unravel at its edges. What value does a house hold if it stands empty and untouched upon his return home? I receded into the shadows, transforming into a mere whisper in his presence. He hardly acknowledged my presence. He ceased inquiring about my feelings, dreams, and needs. Our conversations tended to be succinct, revolving around finances, household necessities, and the children. He held Thomas and his younger sister, Isla, in deep affection. However, within the warmth of their assembly, he appeared to be nothing more than a fleeting shadow. He filled the room, but his heart wandered to distant realms. As I sat at the table opposite him, I couldn't help but wonder if he even noticed my presence. That morning I recall the moment in the kitchen, as Lincoln rushed out the door with urgency. He grasped his briefcase, bestowed a tender kiss upon the crown of Isla's head, and shot a quick look in my direction, conveying an unspoken apology. "I'm sorry, Bella, but I won't be able to make it today. A situation arose at the workplace, and I chose to abstain from engaging in any conflict." I simply inclined my head, as was my habit, feeling a constriction in my throat in reaction. I gently reminded myself that it was entirely acceptable, Thomas. In that instant, Thomas, at the tender age of 16, stood tall and slender, granting me the freedom to chart my own course with a newfound sense of independence. His brown eyes reflected his father's, yet his expression held a gentler nuance. He held his tongue, even as I disclosed that it would be merely the two of us. He appeared to have become resigned to his father's regular absences, as indicated by the casual shrug that accompanied his indifference. He clutched the bags tightly and guided me toward the vehicle. I observed him in the passenger seat throughout the journey, earphones securely in place, gazing out the window as countless teenagers often do. A smile slowly unfurled upon my lips. He was maturing rapidly, and at moments I caught myself pondering whether I might just blink and lose him for eternity. The journey to the coastline seemed to stretch on indefinitely. My mind drifted to Lincoln, to the warmth we had once embraced, now a distant memory. Finally, we reached our destination, where Thomas assisted in transporting the bags to a serene location by the water's edge. As he arranged the umbrella, I meticulously folded the towels. An unexpected desire to converse with him has enveloped me in a haze of confusion. It might have been his position as my sole confidant, Or maybe I was simply yearning for a receptive listener. Venturing outdoors evokes a charming wave of happiness. Do you not agree? He endeavored to exude an aura of cheer as he nodded his fingers effortlessly, sweeping back his hair with a nonchalant elegance. Indeed, dear mother, it is truly a pleasure. I reclined onto the towel, allowing the sun's tender warmth to embrace my skin, and paused in tranquil stillness. For a moment, I allowed myself a brief respite, attempting to ease the burden of the years gone by, if only for a transient hour. The sun blazed with an intensity that made me glance over at Thomas. "Would you be able to assist me with the oil on my back?" I inquired, my voice unwavering even as a quiver coursed through my chest. I reclined, eyelids sealed, while his fingers, initially hesitant, made contact with my flesh. The heat of his touch intensified. His fingers gliding over my shoulders, descending lower until I sensed him stiffen his breath, hitching in his throat. I allowed him to continue. Unimpeded, I found myself unable to move, reclining with my eyes locked onto the towel, bracing for the unfolding events ahead. The first contact was soft and tentative, his hands trembling, as if he aimed to shield me from any hint of discomfort. A smile danced upon my lips, evoking memories of his childhood, when he would clutch my hand firmly as we wandered down the street together. Back then, his hands were so tiny that I could exert just a bit more force. I delivered the message to him, my voice hushed, and it is satisfactory. He listened with rapt attention, and with every glide of oil across my shoulders, his hands became increasingly potent in their movement. In a moment that felt almost ephemeral, I allowed myself to fully relish the experience. The passage of time had rendered my skin untouched, and the weight of that reality struck me with a force I was reluctant to acknowledge. In that moment, I felt his hands move softly and purposefully along the curve of my back, my breath hitched in my throat. And as I opened my lips to respond, an all-consuming silence wrapped around me, leaving me utterly voiceless. I reassured myself with the notion that it was entirely acceptable. He asserted that he was simply providing help, suggesting that I was fooling myself. However, I discovered that I was not in such a predicament. His hands lingered momentarily at the perimeter of my towel, and I sensed his uncertainty. I sensed the awakening of my own feelings, and rather than halting him, I responded, "It's fine, please go on." The words lingered in the atmosphere, and as soon as they escaped my lips, I grasped their unyielding nature. Thomas stood motionless, shrouded in an unsettling quiet. I shut my eyes tightly, my grip unwavering, fully conscious of his hands lingering in a manner that felt unmistakably out of place. My heart raced with fervor, as if he could perceive its frantic rhythm. I yearned to shift and elevate myself to a sitting posture. I could have ordered him to cease, but I restrained myself. I could not allow it to unfold. Even now, I wrestle with the ambiguity surrounding the motivations for my choices. Did loneliness propel me forward, or was it an ingrained yearning for validation, no matter the ethical ramifications, or was it merely a feeling of apathy that shaped my decisions? On that day by the shore, a deep rift emerged within me, forever changing the core of my existence. In reflecting on the matter, I find it impossible to ignore the profound change that unfolded after that day at the beach. The emotions coursing through me, the sights that unfolded before my eyes, and Thomas's lingering gaze were far from fleeting. They displayed an unyielding resolve. With each look we shared, a tangible change unfolded within him, an ineffable quality that I struggled to define, yet found utterly undeniable. Time and again, I found myself drawn back to those moments we shared. The way he hung in the air, and the electric tension that surged through me. I despised myself for it, and nurtured bitterness towards him, for inciting such feelings about my stepson Lincoln, remained blissfully oblivious. He returned home late, as was his habit, his tie askew, and his face reflecting weariness. He pressed his lips to my cheek, a gesture steeped in familiarity, a faint echo of what had once existed. After a long day, I inquired, yearning for a dialogue, yet he merely grunted and nodded, already heading toward the living room. The house radiated a tranquil stillness, yet inside me a tempest of thoughts swirled relentlessly. Thoughts of Thomas enveloped my mind, his hands and the intensity of his gaze echoing persistently within me. As I reflected on my feelings, it dawned on me that their intensity was misplaced. I understood that I had to take decisive action to halt this before it spiraled beyond my grasp. Still, a dimly lit, more introspective part of me yearned to cling to it, desiring the acknowledgement, the caress, the sensation of being seen. With each passing day, Thomas's silence hung in the air, resonating with a profound weight that conveyed unspoken truths. He did not precisely escape my grasp. Instead, it felt as though he lingered in close proximity. He would catch my eye as I moved about the kitchen, tidying up, or simply sitting in solitude on the couch under the night's embrace, and I allowed the moment to develop. I permitted him to proceed without interruption. I refrained from exercising restraint. As the next weekend approached, it arrived with a sweltering heat that enveloped the home in a suffocating embrace. Lincoln embarked on a journey to care for one last vessel, leaving Thomas and me in solitude. Once again, I inquired if he would be interested in returning to the beach, just the two of us. Uncertainty surrounds the motivations behind this proposal I've put forth. Perhaps I entertained the idea that immersing myself in the great outdoors would yield beneficial results, enlighten my thoughts. Perhaps I aimed to push the boundaries of my understanding to see if I could untangle it all. This time, the journey revealed itself with a tranquil elegance. Thomas, however, opted to forego his headphones. He remained motionless, his gaze locked on the scene outside the window, while his knee bounced with an insatiable restlessness. An impulse surged within me, compelling me to shatter the stillness with a few utterances, any utterances at all. Nevertheless, with each attempt to articulate my thoughts, the words lodged themselves in my throat. Upon my arrival at the sandy shore, I discovered the beach to be almost deserted. The ocean's vibrant blue enveloped me, harmonizing with the soft whisper of the breeze as it danced across my skin. I meticulously rearranged the towels, just as I had done before, with Thomas, assisting in the careful organization of everything. I never requested him to apply oil to my back. Instead, I maintained my stance, eyelids sealed, feigning an air of tranquility. Even with my eyes shut, I sensed the heaviness of his stare unmistakably directed at me. That moment marked the true turning point. That afternoon, we decided to rejuvenate ourselves at the beach showers before our departure, seeking to swiftly wash away the sand that clung to our skin. Upon our arrival at the showers, an inexplicable event transpired. Thomas was the first to immerse himself in the water, allowing it to cascade down his back in a gentle, soothing embrace. From the edges of my vision, I caught a fleeting glimpse of him before fully entering his sphere. An overwhelming compulsion compelled me to discard my outer garments and join him, the water invigorating against my skin. Thomas gazed at me, his face a canvas of disbelief. I find myself wrestling with the question of whether it was merely astonishment, a feeling of uncertainty, or perhaps something altogether distinct. Nevertheless, he opted for silence. I caught a fleeting glimpse of him. She then scrutinized him intently and proclaimed, "It might be wise to remove your shorts as well. It is imperative to ensure a thorough rinsing." I find myself pondering the motivations behind my expression of this. Perhaps I sought to assert my dominance or to halt the progression of unfolding events. Perhaps I was evaluating both him and my own being. He paused briefly before yielding, removing his shoes, and in that fleeting moment we found ourselves united, enveloped by the water, as the rain poured down, cleansing everything except our emotions. I turned my eyes away from him and softly requested assistance with my back. He yielded, his hands gentle, as they had been before, yet the palpable tension that lingered in the atmosphere between us was simply inescapable. As his hand brushed against my waist, I felt a sudden tension within me, the atmosphere thickening. While the sound of the rushing water drowned out all other noise, I could have opted to walk away. In that fleeting moment, I could have grasped the essence, yet instead, as the water cascaded down, I moved nearer. The cool droplets contrasting with my warm skin, I grasped his hands, leading them to my shoulders, then gently lower until they settled against me. His grip tightened for a fleeting moment, a wordless understanding passing between us, and I leaned into him, the distance that once separated us, dissolving. It lacked softness or slowness, merely a fleeting moment of necessity, raw and unrefined, before the water swept it all away. It was a fleeting moment, a blur created from need isolation and an indescribable sensation. It arrived with a power that was neither gentle nor gradual. The circumstances were urgent, brimming with intensity, yet marred by imperfections at every turn. Nevertheless, I discovered that I was unable to stop it. I found myself devoid of any desire to continue with that. As it drew to a close, we remained still, the water cascading around us, erasing the traces, yet leaving the truth intact. He embraced me tightly, a sensation that seemed foreign after such a lengthy absence, and I reciprocated with equal warmth. In the wake of it all, we were shrouded in a profound silence as we toweled off. In serene stillness, we collected our possessions and retraced our steps to the vehicle. I observed Thomas from the periphery, his visage illuminated and his gestures rigid. I realized that I had caused irreversible damage to everything around me. We had journeyed across a relentless boundary. After a long stretch of time, an exhilarating energy surged within me. The journey home commenced in quietude. The vehicle wrapped around us in a constricting hold, its presence heavy, as if the air itself pressed down upon us with relentless force. With a steady hand on the steering wheel, I concentrated deeply on the path that lay before me. Yet my mind swirled in a tempest of disorder. Thomas's presence lingered, his hands, his body, the weight of our recent choices, hanging in the air. I frequently cast furtive looks at him in the passenger seat. He remained tense, gazing out the window, his face flushed and jaw clenched. In a moment that caught everyone off guard, he spoke his mind. "Mom," he murmured, his voice barely above a whisper, tinged with doubt. I averted my gaze from him. Although I was unable to respond, I became aware of his comments concerning the recent event. For a brief instant, my heart quickened at the thought of feigning ignorance and dismissing it altogether. The topic shifted, but feigning ignorance was now a lost cause, especially considering our actions. I inhaled unsteadily and responded, "I do not know." That was the truth, or maybe the closest approximation of it. I found myself shrouded in uncertainty about the events that had transpired and the underlying motivations that drove them. All I grasped was that everything had changed. Our silence stretched on until we at last arrived at the driveway. I turned off the engine, yet neither of us moved an inch. Thomas finally turned his gaze toward me, truly seeing me for the first time. And in that moment, I felt a chilling presence in his eyes that enveloped me in fear. It was not confusion, nor guilt, nor even shame. Instead, it was a profound yearning that resided within. How long have you harbored these emotions inside you? He aimed to evoke a shiver down my spine with his words, for I had been contemplating the very same subject. I gazed at him, and it seemed as if a fracture had occurred deep within me. I noted, perhaps longer than I desire, in the quiet embrace of the night we remained in hushed contemplation, deliberating whether to seek refuge indoors, erasing the incident from our minds, and donning the facade of normalcy. However, Thomas nurtured distinct dreams. Just as I was about to open the door, he leaned in and captured my lips with his. Initially, it exuded a gentle warmth and delicacy. He seemed cautious, as if he feared my possible withdrawal. But I felt no such inclination. I permitted him to kiss me, reciprocated the gesture, and then surrendered to a surge of emotion, uncertain whether it was the solitude from years of neglect, or the fervor of Thomas's gaze, which had been absent for far too long. I yielded to the very spirit of the instant that lay just outside our threshold. Thomas wrapped me in his embrace, his hands gliding over my body with an undeniable sense of belonging, as if they were fated to find their place there. After years of dormancy, I felt an exhilarating rush of energy, an intense yearning, and a deep acknowledgement of my own value. Nothing else mattered. The duration of our connection slips from my memory, yet eventually we sought refuge within the walls of our shelter. The recollection of our stroll to the door is hazy, yet the warmth of his hand, wrapping around mine, lingers along with the electric silence that filled the space, brimming with unvoiced sentiments. Silence wrapped around us, rendering words meaningless. As we stepped inside, the air grew dense, brimming with an undeniable energy, as if we had been restraining ourselves for an eternity, and finally the dam had given way. The days that ensued were enveloped in a dense fog, with Thomas hovering nearby, ever vigilant for opportunities to discreetly brush against me or catch a fleeting glance when he believed he was unseen. I urged myself to hold back, to withdraw. to put a stop to whatever this could become. Each time my eyes fell upon him, I was struck by the deep void that mirrored my own, as if we were mere shadows of one another, resonating with the same hollowness, the same despair. It felt utterly impossible to look away, nor did I have any desire to do so. As shadows draped the room, I lay in bed beside Lincoln, my mind adrift in contemplation of the bond we shared, harmonizing effortlessly with the rhythm of his breath. As my thoughts drifted to Thomas in the adjacent room, I recalled the warmth of his touch and the way he infused my spirit with vitality. With my eyes shut, I curled inward like a serpent, realizing that this was not a sustainable journey ahead. I was aware of it. The situation was imperfect, yet I felt utterly helpless to stop the escalating tension between us, which intensified with each day, until it ultimately culminated in a dramatic clash. It transpired late one evening, as I labored diligently in Lincoln. As I drifted into a state of reverie, Thomas and I found ourselves in the kitchen, immersed in the rhythmic chore of washing dishes. A diversion I sought to occupy my thoughts, I sensed his presence, hovering just behind me, an unseen participant in the dance of darkness. I found him gazing at me in the same way he had on the beach. "Thomas," I whispered softly, seeking to guide him from his chosen path. Yet he drew nearer, closing the distance until I could feel the heat of his breath brushing against my neck. "Mom," he whispered softly, "it lingers in my mind." Ceaselessly. I was completely immobilized, my heart pounding with such intensity that I worried it might explode from my chest. I intended to instruct him to stop his departure. He returned to his room, seemingly resolved to abandon me, but I discovered that I could not bring myself to comply. I gazed at him and spoke the one phrase I should have restrained, that I too could not refrain. In that fleeting moment, everything unraveled, and Thomas lingered too near his breath, a warm whisper against my neck. "Mom," he murmured, his voice heavy with unexpressed emotions. I pivoted, and his hand settled on my waist, drawing me softly closer to him. His lips grazed mine, first hesitantly, then with conviction, and I responded the warmth of him enveloping me, silencing everything else. It was misguided, yet it resembled the breath of fresh air after an eternity of being stifled. In a transient surge of urgency, I surrendered to his kiss, disregarding the ethical implications and the truth of Lincoln, as well as the existence we had meticulously crafted. What began as a fleeting moment has evolved into an overwhelming burden of shame that I struggle to carry. The situation persists unchanged, yet it does not deter my resolve. Rather, it is this very aspect that evokes the most profound fear within me. Each day I watch my husband Lincoln and my daughter AA, and I can't help but ponder their ignorance, their failure to recognize reality for what it genuinely is. The deepening fissures in our family may stem from their preoccupation with their own lives, rendering them oblivious to my hardships. Or perhaps I have merely become more adept at concealing them. However, I am keenly aware that this situation cannot last indefinitely. Secrets like shadows linger in the corners of our lives, waiting for the moment to step into the light. When they finally reveal themselves, the fallout will undoubtedly surpass any effort I made to conceal them. I have persistently convinced myself that this is erroneous, that Thomas deserves superior treatment, and that I as well am worthy of more. Still, each time his hand brushes against mine, or his eyes capture me with that subtle intensity, I hesitate. I understand, it's a boundary. We cannot revert, a crack in the existence I crafted alongside Lincoln. In Thomas's touch, I discover a spark, long buried, a warmth I yearn for, even as it rends my very being. He breathes new life into my soul, in a manner I haven't experienced in years, perhaps never at all, and that is the reality I must face. I am at a standstill when it comes to resolving this predicament. Amidst the fog of uncertainty surrounding the resolution of this issue, I feel compelled to share my story with the hope that someone somewhere may possess the key to unlock a solution. I find myself in an uncharted territory I have yet to contemplate. Would you be so kind as to assist me in finding a way out of this chaos before it reaches a point of no return? I sincerely ask that you offer any insights you may possess, particularly if you have encountered a similar situation or are acquainted with someone who has. I eagerly await your reply. Moreover, let this serve as a cautionary tale for everyone. Within the quietude of solitude, one might discover profound depths that were once beyond imagination. Do not allow yourself to stray as far from the path as I have.